What does goal setting look like for you?
I've like unstrategically run my career, right? I have no bigger goals that I'm running at, honestly. I know what I'm interested in the next 6 months, and planning beyond that feels ludicrous to me.
Maggie.
Hey.
It is so good to see you. Thank you so much for taking some time.
Yeah, really happy that you invited me out here.
I feel like we've had precious little time to actually hang out in person.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've been following your work forever. It was funny because we talked about this a little bit before we started, how you sort of develop these parasocial relationships with people where you feel like you know them really well.
Well, you start to question what was real and how much was it you on stream of me watching you on my laptop versus actually interacting with you.
Yeah, and I feel the same way because I've read so much of your writing and I followed so much of your work that I was like, oh yeah, Maggie and I like best friends. And I was like, hold on, wait.
I've always done design and code, as in like I implement my own designs. And this mostly came out of a need of being at small companies. When I first started doing this, I sort of started in visual design and illustration and very much more the graphic stuff. But then I got interested in UX and more like classical UI design. So I just got in there and just started implementing my own designs. And from then on, every company I've worked at, I come in and I'm like, listen, I don't know what a handoff is. There's no way I'm ever going to send you a Figma file. Like, I will design in Figma to discuss the idea, but then I'm implementing it. Like, unless it's something super complex where I need to pair with someone, like, I'm implementing those CSS styles because, no offense, but you all do it correctly. Like, you know.
And it's interesting that you say that because I've had a similar sort of path where my experience with code was because I had designed something and I wanted to make it real. And you know, I at the time couldn't afford to hire a developer. Yeah. So it was like, oh, I can figure this out or it can never exist. And so I've always sort of had that same relationship where it's like I'm like kind of a designer, I'm kind of an engineer, I'm kind of a lot of things, but none of them seem to fit properly. And then I heard somebody just called me a multi-hyphenate the other day, which I thought was really interesting. And it sounds a little less, I don't know, like I like the idea of a polymath, but I don't like calling, like it feels very like, to call yourself a polymath.
We need new labels to say this boundary of skills, which is something like you do a lot of design work and you can implement the work yourself. That's now a new special role that mostly allows employers and you to sort of find each other. It's more like a finding function more than a definition of who you are. Because I think it's a whole separate thing to talk about what it means to implement your own designs and like design your own things and then build them. I think is a really special skill set, and people who have that skill set and work that way can build things that like people who cannot build. It's like you understand the medium deeply and you are able to think in a way that is like opens up way more avenues and makes your design way better. And just it's a special thing in itself, no matter what we call it. It's cool that we're trying to find new labels for this type of work.
You could have called yourself a lot of things in your career, and your skill set is super varied. How have you navigated that in your career? And I guess how has it affected your career?
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to think of how to, like, what direction to take next. And there's a lot to explore there.
Yes.
Like, one of them is, you're right, like, I've always had a set of skills that are hard to put a strict box around or label on, because I think my skill set is just, like, I'm like you. Like, I just jump around it. It's like, I went hard on illustration early in my career, and then I switched into kind of UX. I was more interested in that. And then I guess into product design, which is slightly different. And now I'm like, oh, this like design engineering stuff feels more like me. The way I've gotten jobs since then was that I put all my work online and all my reasoning and thinking and writing online, and people came to me. So it's like, I haven't had to look for job titles and try to fit into them, because I'm just like, well, I'm a mess. Here's what it is. It's all on the public web for you to read. If this looks like I could help you, come find me. I feel like you've done this well too.
I saw a quote. I think it was either Taylor Desson said this or somebody on Taylor's show said this, but that this idea of kind of building and learning in public is interviewing at scale.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
I thought that was a really interesting way to frame it. You've sort of been exploring all of these different things, and it sort of leads you down these wandering and branching paths. How does the gestalt of the skill set, how does that play into your day-to-day now? So you said you went hard on illustration early.
Yep.
Do you find that you still do that? Or are you using those skills, or are you just kind of like, thank you, I'm done with this, on to the next thing?
Right. We were kind of joking about this earlier. I was saying that I have some disease where like the minute I get some degree of mastery in a thing where I'm like, okay, I can do this well, people are willing to pay me for it, like I have a stable job in this, I'm like, well, I'm not interested anymore, like this is boring. So this kind of happened with illustration. Like I defined a style, I got pretty good at it, I had lots of people wanting that style, and I was like, I don't want to go see what UX design is about. I'm not saying I'm a great product designer, but I've gotten up to the stage where I'm like, okay, I've worked at a couple companies, I know how to do the basics, and I'm like, it's not as interesting anymore. Like I don't want to keep going down that. And now I'm like, oh, this design engineering thing I've always been into, but what if I actually took that seriously? And I'm engaged with actual engineers, so I see how he works and what he knows, and can actually compare myself to a good benchmark and be like, okay, that's an actual engineer who's like has put in the time and learned the stuff and done the courses and like really built a lot of complex projects, and I have not done that. So, but that to me is exciting. I want to run at the fun, new, open space. I don't want to keep going down the narrow path that I know what it looks like.
Yes.
Which is a good and bad way to approach your career. It's like jack of all trades, do you never get mastery in anything? But I couldn't imagine any other way to do it, because I will inherently get bored if you tell me to just do the thing I already know how to do forever.
In my career, I've never been able to take like external validation as good enough.
Yeah.
And so once I've hit 80%, I feel like I'm delivering enough, and I can see where I'd want to improve, but I can see how long the time horizon is to hitting the levels that I of like the best in the world. And I start looking for my next 0 to 80%. That has made my career better. I'm always just interested in something. I'm interested until I'm not, and then I find another shiny thing over here and I go after that.
Yep.
It's probably cost me in the sense of, I'm not a distinguished engineer somewhere because I focused hard on the thing that I was good at 10 years ago. In your career, I think there have been points where you were sort of pointed to as like the best in the industry at, and so you've kind of hit that point where you were like a household name for this particular niche. How are you defining success for yourself?
I'm not very motivated by money, and I'm not very motivated by like job titles. People I think try to bait me with that sometimes, and I just go, unfortunately, I'm just not wired that way. But internal motivation, I'm super, super driven by. I think you might have the same thing where like I get very excited when I have an idea and I have a sense in my head of exactly how I want it to be. Maybe not like in detail, it's always a fuzzy thing. Like I think I could make this thing. And then I go, I can see the tangible steps to me making this. And that is motivating. That is like, this is a fun project. I can like take all these steps, I can get to it, I can make the thing that to me is very satisfying and whole. And whether I get paid for that or not is very like secondary, or doesn't make me work harder and doesn't make me want to do the thing more or less.
What does drive you? Like, I do what I do because blank. Like for you, what is that blank?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot of it is the internal motivation thing. Like as much as I definitely get excited by like, oh, this is an untapped opportunity, or we like noticed a hole in the market that no one else has seen. Like that stuff is obviously inherently like, yeah, let's do something kind of radical and crazy and new, gets me going. But I still love the day-to-day, the like immediate small goals and just like stepping towards those. So it is a lot of like making something that feels and looks good.
Do you find that when you're making these small goals, are they always in service of a bigger goal, or are you picking small goals because the small goals are fun for their own sake? Is it a blend? Like how do you make these choices?
I don't set big goals, like huge goals. I don't. I think some people are like, right, in 5 years I want to be, I don't know, this job title, or I want to have this much money, or I don't know what other people pick, or they want to run this company. I've like unstrategically run my career, right? I have no bigger goals that I'm running at, honestly. I have a lot of medium goals that is like, feels ambitious, but I can totally do. Like I can see the steps to get to it.
For me, and in other conversations that I've had, there's a sense of pressure that you should have like a big goal, right? And if you don't have a big goal, then how can you have a plan?
I kind of joked for recently I had to kind of write down my 3 to 5 year long-term goals for like my manager or something at work. And I kind of put on Twitter, like, does anyone want to write my 3 to 5 year goals for me? Because I certainly don't have them, because I can't fathom what I will be interested in 3 years. Like, I know what I'm interested in the next 6 months, and planning beyond that feels ludicrous to me because I don't know what future Maggie like wants or needs or like will be interested in. Like Fog of War, I can't see beyond like 6 months ahead of me, and I'm not going to try because it feels pointless.
If you're not setting a 5-year plan, then what does goal setting look like for you?
I'm a pretty happy person no matter what. I have a pretty like I'm fine disposition most of the time. And like I'm a very, in a way, like low goals, low ambition person. But in a way that like it still adds up to me making lots of stuff in the world and trying to do lots of good and like try to produce stuff, but in a very non-driven way. Like I'm not actually that driven in the end. Like I like making stuff in the moment. I like following my interests. I feel like the only way I could do stuff in the world is just very short term, like, oh, like, wouldn't it be cool if I had this? I think it'll take 2 months to build it, like that sort of foresight. But anything beyond that feels way too chaotic and unknowable and like not worth my time in a way that it would almost be counterproductive, because then I would get stressed about trying to achieve this big goal that I don't have enough information about, that might not even be the right goal for me.
I kind of love that framing. The idea of not having a goal at all is wild.
Right.
The sense of relief that must be to be able to just do a thing because it's fun to do the thing and not worrying whether it's strategically valuable or something like that.
Yeah.
And I guess it's also like pretty heartening to hear you say that and to see what you have accomplished in your career by what you call not having goals. I would say you have done as much or more than a lot of us would want to in our careers. And so that's almost like there's a lesson in here. Like we can boil this down to an aphorism.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, Buddhism would have a lot to say about it.
Yeah. What you're describing is interesting because you're almost living the embodiment of the journey is the destination, and like the point is getting there, not like being there is almost like whatever.
Yeah.
Just the end. Like who cares about the end?
That's boring. It's terrible. Yeah. You set these big goals that are in one domain from what you can see from your adjacent possible. You're just projecting down one linear path, and instead of the like, oh, maybe here, maybe this, maybe over here. You're
sort of like preemptively barricading doors.
Yeah.
Because if you say like, I have to get to here.
Yeah.
And then you look and you're like, that could be fun. You're like, oh, but it's not in service of my big goal.
Yeah.
And then you lose these opportunities to explore that are honestly, I don't know, if I look back at the things that I've enjoyed the most in my career, it's when I've said, I don't know why I would ever need to know this, but I want to know.
I want to know.
And it's led to some, like, what we're doing right now is the product of me saying, what if I could make something really cool with video? And I didn't have a plan,
right?
But here we are.
Yeah. It worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
When you think about this, what is a good career?
Okay, do you think you should actually enjoy what you're doing every day? Like, you should wake up on Monday and not be stressed out and like, this is terrible, I don't want to have to do this. You actually enjoying the process and like taking joy in the craft and feeling like you can really dig in and be really good at this thing. And I definitely think you should not coast or be mediocre and be like, well, that's fine, I'm getting paid, it's a stable job. I mean, maybe that's for someone who has different career ambitions, but I think of it as like, I need to be definitely doing really good craftsmanship at whatever I'm doing. And then I'd say also, jumping around, like when I do some new company, you're exposed to a new field and some new like disciplines, and I just want to at least understand them or explore them, and usually it ends to me shifting what I want to do.
Right.
Letting the world influence you and like letting it take you to different spots.
What I would call your ability to get a job is excellent networking.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Do you think of yourself as a networker?
Yeah, I've never networked, or like anytime there was a networking event, I was not going to it kind of thing. But I definitely believe in meeting people. I like people. I like talking to people. Again, that is a huge advantage in a career. Like, if you happen to be very naturally social and you like talking, great, you're going to be able to meet more people. And I've met wonderful people, like friends, and gotten closer to people, but I didn't do it to network.
Right.
And I didn't do it to get a job. But I just like hanging out with people, and so I end up organizing a lot of stuff. And then, everyone meets everyone, and you end up being introduced to people. So I do get a lot of job offers by people who know me through my community organizing work, like someone I know, and they just kind of pass it along. And so it does end up being good for your career. There's some belief that your job and your personal life should be very separate. And I think people that try to keep them separate or have some beliefs about how they have to be very distinct things, like, maybe do themselves a disservice. Like they're trying to separate things that you cannot separate.
I feel like the big takeaway that I'm getting from here is that you, in your career and life, it seems like the enemy of progress would be definition. Embracing the ambiguity of like, doing stuff is just doing stuff. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
It doesn't have to be in service of a big, 10-year plan.
Right.
It could just be stuff.
Yeah, very much that. There are no goals, there are no plans. I just do stuff. And like maybe half of it's rubbish and like half of it's actually okay or whatever. And like 5% is really good. And so everyone just sees the really good stuff and they're like, oh, wow, you're really like valuable or something. And I'm like, well, I'm just sort of over here chaotically doing things. And like no one notices the stuff that goes flop,
On to the next one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right down, took it all in my head and on my heart. I stick around, ride it out to cool me down. You left too many holes to cover them all up. At least enough to always bring me back to you. Yeah, it's a lot of gold, but not for real. If somebody